Yeah, joining us on the phone here this morning is Congressman Tracy Mann, who joins us once again from. Are you in Washington D.C. this morning, sir?
Yep, was in Kansas last week for Thanksgiving. Made the K-State Colorado game, which is great to see that win on Saturday. But came back here to Washington D.C. for votes this week. Arrived Monday. Scheduled to have votes through tomorrow morning.
All right, yeah, and busy time of year because you guys probably have a lot of work that you're trying to get squeezed in a short time period. Is that about right?
No, that's exactly right. A lot to do before the end of the year here. One of the biggest things on tap is a annual bill. It always passes. It's called the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. Basically, the bill that funds our military. So that will be front and center here next week as the end of the year is quickly approaching.
And that's a big deal for Fort Riley. Anything of note in that for our area that we can look for in that bill?
Well, one of the biggest things is making sure that our military is focused on lethality, making sure that we're supporting our troops. In the Working Families Tax Cut bill that passed this summer, one of the things included in there was pay increases for our troops. That's really important, and so there'll be more of those kind of things for Fort Riley and for all of our servicemen and women, which is incredibly important. Hey, we've got to be standing up for, standing behind the people that are defending us, and that's what that bill will be focused on.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that bill here coming up. I know that one thing that's come up here this week with the end of college football season and looking ahead to the bowls is a bill that's kind of tied to that, the name, image, and likeness aspect, and that's called the SCORE Act. And this has got some momentum behind it, and I'm curious kind of your thoughts on that. It's got some support, it sounds like, on both sides of the aisle. What is the SCORE Act, and kind of explain how it would kind of change things from what we have right now? Kind of like a little bit of the wild, wild west going on with this NIL at the moment.
Well, it is, and I love college sports, and I think it's important for our state. It's a big part of who we are as Kansas, right? Rooting for our favorite college team. For us, it's the Cats, of course. The SCORE Act, it's not going to solve all the problems, like you said. It's sort of the wild, wild west, but it would clarify national policy. It works with the NCAA to ensure that student athletes' privacy is protected. It also helps to standardize this. One problem that we have now is it's a patchwork of 50 different state laws that oversee and provide some parameters for NIL, but it varies widely state to state, and then obviously states are competing against each other. So it starts to standardize. It also gives the NCAA a little more teeth. Again, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it is going to do a little bit to tame the wild, wild west right now that is college sports.
Have you heard from Gene Taylor here at K-State or Travis Goff over at KU? What their thoughts are on this legislation?
Oh, yeah, very much so. And we've been talking to them for months about this. They both have been in my office. Appreciate the relationship and the friendship with both of them. I don't want to speak for them, but they're supportive of the SCORE Act. The Big 12 came out and endorsed it and supported it, as does every member school. Just helping them to have some guardrails for to protect these programs, but also to protect our student athletes as well. And through all this, we ought to make sure that we preserve the non-major sports. The Olympic sports. We have to make sure that there's money's left for them, and this is a big step in the right direction.
You and I both know there's so much money in the NCAA, and ever since that court case a few years ago, it's just been kind of a free for all as this has been going on, and I think a solution is needed here. Don't know if this is going to solve it all, but we'll certainly can't hurt to maybe take a first step.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, just providing some clarity. Making sure the NCAA is able to act in some instances, making sure that, it's not a 50-state patchwork, that there is some standardization to NIL, making sure that our student athletes are not being taken advantage of by their agents in some of these deals. Those are all things that the SCORE Act addresses, and proud to support it. I'm glad that KU and K-State are supporting it as well, and look forward to it hopefully passing on the floor tomorrow morning.
I see. Okay. Well, some other things that have been happening. I mean, I could ask you all kinds of things here, but we only have so much time. I want to ask you a little bit about some other things, including what's going to happen maybe with the USMCA agreement. That's the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, for those that may not be familiar. We've been part of that for a few years, I think maybe dating back to the first Trump administration. There's rumors that may be coming to an end, but maybe only as a negotiating tact. And what's your thoughts on that? Should the U.S. continue with that? Where should we go from here?
Yeah, well, NAFTA came about decades ago, and then it was updated and called USMCA. And you're right, that happened in the first Trump administration. That USMCA expires next summer, so there's an open comment period where folks are able to weigh in. End of the day, Mexico and Canada are very important trading partners of ours. We got to make sure that continues to be the case. We also have to make sure that our farmers, ranchers, also our manufacturers in the U.S. are not taken advantage of in an unfair USMCA deal. So all that's being reviewed right now, and it'll certainly be front and center towards the middle of next year.
I see. All right. As far as I know, there's been some discussions on, we had obviously the shutdown, potentially maybe having some work on GOP healthcare plan to replace subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Has that gone anywhere, or is there negotiations happening behind the scenes that you can tell us about?
Yeah, well, they're very, very robust conversations going on right now behind the scenes. We'll see what is able to there's agreement on to get drafted into law. In my view, at the end of the day, Obamacare has been a failure. It's called the Affordable Care Act. I think you could actually call it the Unaffordable Care Act when you look at how costs have just continued to skyrocket. I think instead of subsidizing this failed, broken system, we've got to get to the root causes of why is our healthcare in this country so rapidly rising in costs. We need to be focused on, I've been an advocate, we got to focus on root causes, things like transparency and pricing, more competition, tort reform. These are basic things we can and ought to be doing to reduce costs. And I'm optimistic that that's where we're going to start seeing out of any legislation that will come forward.
I almost wonder if that might be a key, election topic here in the midterms in 2026. What other priorities do you see coming up here as we get into that next cycle here?
Yeah, well, a lot of things. When you look at, when President Biden was in office, if you think of our country like a ship, ran the ship into an iceberg, right? And so a lot of this year, and with the Trump administration, it was given a mandate by voters a little over a year ago. You've got to back the ship up, you've got to repair it, you've got to bail out a bunch of water and set it into course. And that's what this year has been about. And, as evidenced by passing the Working Families Tax Cut, landmark legislation this summer. And so that's going to continue, but you don't turn a ship overnight. There's still a lot of work to do to continue to get the country back on track and moving in the right direction.
And would you say that we're going in the right direction? I know there's been a lot of chaos in Washington, D.C. this year.
No, we absolutely are. And you look at where the country is headed, what our priorities now are, much better spot today than we were a year ago. I mean, look no further, Brandon, than the southern border. People forget, but the number one issue in the election last fall was our wide open southern border. And the last administration said that they needed, they were not able to act. Their hands were tied. Well, it turns out we need a commander-in-chief that actually was willing to enforce the laws that secure the border. So the numbers for last month recently came out, record low numbers again this month. So the border, there's more work to do to make that permanent, but the border secure, that's a big win. We have tax policies in place that's going to let this economy grow. We have a lot of policies in place that are going to help our farmers here moving forward. So, yeah, we are moving in the right direction in a really real and tangible way.
All right. Well, Congressman Mann, we appreciate the time as always. I know you got to get to your next thing, so we'll let you go and appreciate you. Talk to you again down the road sometime.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me. Have a great rest of the day.
All right. Congressman Tracy Mann again joining us here on the phone here on News Radio KMAN.